Let's talk about the Pixel 6a. If somehow you've been living under a rock for these past few years and you don't know what that letter A signifies behind this Pixel's name, the 3A, 4A, 5A, etc., that basically means that this is the budget-friendly version of this year's Pixel device. Now, in general, when you hear budget version, your brain might immediately say, oh, so it's probably not very good, right? But that's not really the case with these devices. The A series of the Pixel line have historically been quite good. They've had very good battery life, very good cameras in particular for that price. They get updates relatively quickly, and for longer, they are Pixel devices. After all, they tend to look relatively decent, and they seem to be fairly durable in that they are made of some better materials. Maybe not better, but they're not made of glass most of the time, which I actually take to be an advantage in a lot of ways. And if we talk about the Pixel 6a, you're going to see that a lot of these things remain true. This looks very, very similar to this year's Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro. The styling of this device is nearly identical to those devices. You've got that visor up top, that very large camera bump. So you might think from the surface glance, this is very similar to the 6 and the 6 Pro. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to answer that question. How good should the Pixel 6a be? What are some competitors in a general area, similar price point to this device? Should you be saving your money for the 6a, spending it elsewhere? We're going to try and decode all of this in this video. So in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is we've got to talk about the specs of the Pixel 6a. And to do that, we are going to turn to GSM Arena for a lot of this information. They have a great website when it comes to just putting these specs together into nice, beautiful, spreadsheety looking things. So with the Pixel 6a, this is what you're going to be getting. A 6.1 inch display, which is relatively large, but not gargantuan. 1080 by 2400, so it's basically just an HD resolution, which I actually think is fine, but keep that in mind. Now, this display is only 60 hertz refresh. So that's also something that might bother you. The camera system here is a 12.2 megapixel primary sensor and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. Now, when you immediately jump forward and you think, man, the Pixel 6 proper has a 50 megapixel sensor. That is a larger sensor and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. And if you get the Pro, 48 megapixel optical 4x optical zoom. I said the word optical twice, and it seems like quite a big downgrade. But I'm going to tell you something. This is the same sensor that is in the Pixel 5 and the Pixel 4, the Pixel 3, etc., etc. Google knows how to get really, really great shots out of this sensor. So don't worry your little head on this one. For this price point, in this area, $449, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a phone that's going to take better photos than the Pixel 6a. Now, not having the telephoto might be a little bit bothersome, but at least you've got the ultra-wide. Camera performance should be, for this price point, should be very, very good. It is running the Google Tensor chip, which is the same processor that Google has custom made for the 6 and the 6 Pro. While we mentioned the 6 and the 6 Pro, let's talk about the fact that the Pixel 6 is $599. So we're looking at a difference of $150. And the 6 Pro, which is not on this screen currently, is $899. It's a pretty hefty upgrade. So I don't think you're really going to be comparing the 6a with the 6 Pro. If you're looking for something in the budget realm, 6 Pro probably off limits, but the standard 6 at $599, $150, we kind of need to talk about the differences here. So with that Pixel 6, the screen does get a little bit bigger, 6.4 inches. It also does jump up to a 90 hertz refresh rate. If you're used to a high refresh rate, it's going to take you a little bit of time to adjust to having 60 hertz. Things are going to look a little janky for you there for a little while. In terms of the camera, yeah, you do have a 50 megapixel primary camera, which is going to allow you to be able to zoom as well. So it's not just higher resolution. The higher resolution also lets you digitally crop zoom your way in. So you're going to be missing out on those sorts of things. The battery, which is something that I've not specifically talked about, 4614 milliamp hours versus 4410. I actually think this is a win for the Pixel 6a because it's close, 200 milliamp hours apart, right? But it's a smaller display running at a lower refresh rate. So I think the battery life, if it's not really similar, the 6a might actually scrape out a win there, really. When you're looking at the 6a and the 6, they're more similar than they are different. There are some material differences, right? So the 6 is a glass back, which might be something that you don't like. It's going to give you wireless charging, though. The 6A is an aluminum frame with a plastic back. It's going to be harder to shatter, although the front is Gorilla Glass 3 rather than Gorilla Glass Victus on the 6A. So it's kind of a give and take there. Do you want wireless charging? 6 is probably the way to go. There are specific features like that that might matter more or less to you. Do you want the extra 2 gigs of RAM, 8 gigs of RAM on the 6, 6 gigs of RAM on the 6A? There's not a colossal difference, though. But I would tell you, yeah, definitely compare these two deeply in your mind and determine which way you want to go, even though they are really, really similar. But there are some other devices in this general region that are actually going to be cheaper. So OnePlus just announced the Nord N20 5G, and there's some similarities here, right? 6.4-inch screen. That's a bit bigger. Same exact resolution, AMOLED display. I'm assuming this is also 60 hertz because GSM Arena does not have it listed as being 90. 64 megapixel main camera, and then honestly, these other two cameras you can probably just ignore. You're not going to be using them. A similarly large 4500 milliamp hour battery. So battery, the life there should be relatively decent. You have 6 gigs of RAM, which is really similar as well. A big difference, though, is that you're running the Snapdragon 695. This is a much weaker, I would assume. I haven't looked at Geekbench scores here, but would you rather have the 695 or the Tensor? I think you're going to go with Tensor pretty much 10 out of 10 times. And then you think about the fact that this thing is supposed to launch somewhere in the 280, 290 range, and you may be thinking, wow, that's a lot cheaper than 449, and it looks like it's got fairly similar specifications. Well, a couple of things here to worry about. We're launching with Android 11. Android 13 is already in beta. The Pixel 6a will be launching, I believe, with Android 12, and of course 13 will be coming to them very, very quickly after launch. That software support, not just the longevity of the software support, but just the quality of the software. And I know. Pixel 6 Pro have had some bugs. They've had some issues. I get that. A lot of them, though, have been cleared up over time. And the 6A has the benefit of being effectively the same phone as them. So the processor's the same. So all those bug fixes, the 6A is not going to launch. Knock on wood, is not going to launch in the same sort of buggy state that the 6 and the 6 Pro did. A lot of people were mad about the fingerprint scanner on the 6 and the 6 Pro. It's a different scanner on the 6A. So a lot of these things should be taken care of. You're going to get all these great Pixel features like Magic Eraser in the camera, which is something that they do show off in their little teaser video. You're going to get all of these features, all these, bits of software magic, night sight, the camera performance. Look, I understand that this is a 64 megapixel camera, so your brain says that that's better than the 12. The 6A is going to absolutely demolish this thing's camera. I would bet that the experience of using the phone, the 6A, is going to be a superior experience. I'm not trying to, disparage the Nord N20. I think OnePlus makes some decent phones, but there is a price difference there, and you're going to be able to feel that as far as I would be able to tell you. A device that I think is probably much more similar in terms of the overall quality to this would be the Samsung Galaxy A53. It's another even bigger screen, 6.5 inches at 120 hertz. That's a win for Samsung. If you look at the cameras here, a 64 megapixel primary, 12 megapixel ultra wide, then you've got the chromie macro and the chromie depth that you're probably not really going to be using, but still, you could say that's probably going to be relatively close. I would imagine that the 6A will still have the better camera performance, but we're getting to a place with Samsung software and hardware-wise where they can probably compete quite directly against one another. What about software? Hey, we're launching with Android 12, and Samsung's been really good about keeping these things updated, rolling out updates to lesser phones in their line. So I think the A53 in that regard probably holds its own. What about a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, an even larger battery, 25 watt charging as well versus 18 watt charging? We've got micro SD expansion. We have an Exynos 1280 chipset. So in terms of that, I'm probably going to go Tensor again here. But that Exynos 1280 is not going to be too much of a slouch. I think you're going to be able to use this thing pretty happily. Probably not going to have any issues at all. Glass front, plastic frame, plastic back. So the aluminum frame on this 6A might be something worth talking about as well. And while this thing did launch at $450, it can be had right now on Amazon for only $350, $349.99. So you're going to see sales on this thing. So if there, like I said, if there's a competitor out there that I think really gets close, it's going to be something like the A53. That's going to be a really solid phone. Now, again, bear in mind a lot of the software features Samsung has, Google has, like Magic Eraser, Samsung has sort of equivalents too in a lot of these phones. So guys, let me know what you think. If you are in the market for a secondary phone or just a budget phone, you don't want to spend $1,500 on a smartphone, and you're deciding between the devices that I mentioned here, or maybe there's another device that I didn't mention. Look, there are a plethora of budget devices that are pretty solid out there. TCL has several. We've actually looked at one just a couple of weeks ago. Probably going to be looking at another one very, very soon, if not today or yesterday. It might have happened literally right when this video is coming out. Let me know what that device would be. 6A, A53, other mysterious device. Maybe you're an Apple person. I didn't mention the Apple iPhone SE 2022 at all. And the reason for that is not because I'm like, oh, I hate Apple. It's mostly just because I'm not sure what person is deciding between the 6A and the iPhone. If you want an iPhone, but you want it for cheap, you're going to buy the SE. I'm not sure why you would be going for the 6A if you want an iPhone. That's just my logic. Maybe I'm wrong. You're probably going to get a lot of comments from people saying that they were deciding between exactly those two phones and that I'm an idiot for not including it. But there it is. iPhone SE does exist. So talk about this in the comments down below. Kind of let me know what you think about this. I think that the 6A looks very, very good. In fact, there's part of me that wants to take the plunge and buy the thing so that I can cover it here more directly on this channel. Have a modern Pixel in the house. Again, the closest thing I've got now is a Pixel 5. Is getting a little long in the tooth. I've used it to cover the 13 beta, the 12L beta, so forth and so on. Maybe having another one, a newer one, might be a good way to go as well. Let me know if you'd like to see that as well. Guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your way out. I will see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.